Welcome to Segment 5, Part 2, Adventures on the Pacific Rim, where we visit the Blue Mountains in Australia. With my brother-in-law, Lee Guang, driving, we headed off from Sydney to our goal, about 50 miles away, or 80 kilometers, the Blue Mountains National Park. The Blue Mountains National Park is located in the Blue Mountain region of New South Wales and Eastern Australia. But the Blue Mountains National Park is only part of the Greater Blue Mountains Area Park System that encompasses 8 different national parks and an area of over 4,000 square miles or 10,300 square kilometers. In comparison and by way of reference, the Blue Mountains National Park is about the size of Yosemite National Park in the United States. Our first stop was the Katoomba Cascades and Katoomba Falls walking track. Parking near Maple Grove Park and paying for 1.5 hours of parking by scanning the Q code and following the instructions. We followed the signs and descended the stairways to the base of the Katoomba Cascades. One of the biggest draws to the area is the 87 miles of walking, biking, running trails segmented into around 360 officially listed and marked tracks. These trails cater to various skill levels and endurance levels and offer a plethora of hiking, bushwalking, and mountain biking opportunities. We made our way toward one of the untold number of lookouts scattered throughout the park. The paths were cluttered and covered by Jurassic-like ferns and a sparse tree cover. And eventually we were rewarded with our first lookout and gazed with some wonder out over the Federal Pass, the stunning Jameson Valley, and the Jurassic Forest carpeting the landscape below. From our vantage point at the Watchtower Lookout, we were treated to a view of the huge bus-like cable car, chock full of people trundling across the gap near the Katoomba Falls from Scenic World on the west side of the escarpment to the Scenic World Skyway East Station on the east side. Scenic World is a large nature experience park with access to 2 cable trams traversing the passes of the Jameson Valley far below, a steeply inclined railway with 52-degree slopes in spots along the line, plummeting to the dense Jurassic Forest on the valley floor below. The adventure park also offers elevated walkways through the forest of the valley and access to several scenic trails and tracks. If interested, here is the entrance pricing available at the time of this video's making. We later made our way to Scenic World, only to find that there was no parking and crowds aplenty. We later discovered Scenic World receives over 1 million visitors annually, making it Australia's most visited privately owned tourist attraction. Given that information, a visit should be planned and not be spur of the moment, and purchasing tickets ahead of your visit is highly recommended. The Blue Mountains are, technically and geologically, more correctly called an uplifted plateau dissected by a number of large rivers and punctuated by a number of named mountain peaks. The highest peak in the park is 3,986 feet or 1,215 meters above sea level, while the lowest part is on the Nepean River at 66 feet or 20 meters above sea level as it leaves the park. We stuck to the path and saw some falls through the trees and kept walking and turning and twisting around, but never did find a good place to actually see the falls. We found out later there's only one place to actually see the falls, and it was in the opposite direction of where we were traveling. However, here's some stock footage of the Katoomba Falls so you can see what you missed and I missed too. Not far down the road, on the other side of the pass, resides the Three Sisters. The Three Sisters are an unusual rock formation in the Blue Mountains on the north escarpment of the plateau. They are located close to the town of Kakumba and are one of the Blue Mountains' best-known sites, towering above the Jameson Valley. The three sisters actually have names, and that is Minai, Wimla, and Gunidgidu. A commonly told legend of the three sisters is that the sisters lived in Jameson Valley as members of the Katumba tribe. They fell in love with three men from the neighboring Nepean tribe, but marriage was forbidden by tribal law. The brothers were unwilling to accept this law and decided to capture the three sisters. A major tribal battle ensued, and the sisters were turned to stone by an elder to protect them. But then he was killed in the fighting, and there was no one else who could return them to human form. And so they were doomed to spend eternity as the three rocks we see today. And while this legend is commonly attributed as an indigenous Australian Dreamtime legend, there is evidence to suggest that the legend may be traceable back to a non-indigenous 16-year-old schoolgirl, Patricia Stone, who gave the formations their indigenous names and backstory in an original newspaper essay published in 1931. Of course, there is the drier, less whimsical, and ultimately more boring, scientifically true story of how the three sisters were formed. But truthfully, I much prefer the more fantastical version myself. From nearby Echo Point, a short bushwalking trail takes you to the Three Sisters Honeymoon Bridge and down to the valley floor via 998 steps from the upper lookout on what is called the Giant Stairway. Then if you continue upon that trail for an hour and a half, it leads you to the base of Katumba Falls and the Katumba Scenic Inclined Railway, where if you're out of gas and don't feel like investing another 2 hours worth of labor to get back to where you were, you can take the scenic railway back to the top of the escarpment for a fee. Leaving the three sisters behind, we went to our accommodations for the evening, Laura Gardens. Laura Gardens bills itself as a resort, and my brother-in-law had reserved a 2-bedroom apartment, complete with kitchen, that they ask you not to use, by the way, dining area, a living room, 2 bedrooms, and 1 spacious bathroom. We were on the 2nd floor and had a nice balcony that looked out over the landscape. We left the hotel, went into town, and got something for dinner, headed down, and returned to the Three Sisters the next morning for sunrise. At the Laura Gardens, we got packed up, ready to check out. But before we did that, we headed back to Laura to kind of look the town over, had a bit more leisure. Laura Village, population 4,600, is a suburb in the city of the Blue Mountains local government area that is located about 100 kilometers west of Sydney. It is one of the series of small towns stretched across the main Western Railway line and the Great Western Highway that bisects the Blue Mountains National Park. Laura is situated adjacent to Katumba, the largest center in the upper mountains, and the two towns merge along Laura's western edge. The original inhabitants of the area were the Darug and Gundungurra people, and archaeological evidence suggests that the Aboriginals occupied the area possibly more than 12,000 years ago. First Europeans to enter the area were part of exploratory expeditions in 1813. The first permanent European residents of the area were the gatekeepers for Gatehouse Number 9 for the Western Railway line constructed across the Blue Mountains in 1867 and 68. The town of Lura was never explicitly incorporated as a separate entity in the way that a typical city might be, but was instead established as a mountain retreat set amongst the greater Blue Mountains area. Most of the early commercial buildings in downtown, now called the Lura Mall, were built from 1900 to the 1920s. And the Lura Mall is still the focus of Lura's daily life and business activity. Lura is home to many formal English-style coastline. Paul Sorensen. In 2016, Lura was named in the list of the top 50 most irresistible, exotic, historic, and postcard-worthy small towns in Australia. Lura's biggest stock in trade is the tourist industry. So there are plenty of restaurants, although their opening hours are rather limited. And this was a sleepy early Monday morning, so we explored a bit by the beautiful early morning golden light, then returned to our hotel. At the hotel, we packed up and got ready to go, had breakfast at the Olive Tree restaurant, and decided to explore the property to find out why they called it the Lura Gardens Resort. And we found that reason here at the Lady Fairfax Garden, a part of the hotel property. The gardens are compact but well worth seeing and populated with a number of flowers and the 3 Ps, plants, ponds, and pathways, as well as these guys. Now, I don't know about you, but I always wonder if robot lawnmowers might have an AI installed with an axe to grind and worry just a little bit whether they're going to go for my toes or not. Fortunately, these guys seemed to be pretty benevolent, and we moved on safe to enjoy the gardens. But soon enough, it was time for us to get back on the road and head towards our next destination, the small town of Wentworth Falls, and hopefully to find the falls that for which the town is named. Wentworth Falls is a 3-tiered waterfall fed by the Jameson Creek near the town of Wentworth Falls. The falls and the town are named after William Charles Wentworth, one of the members of the 1813 expedition across the Blue Mountains. The falls are accessible via the National Walking Trail and the Overcliff-Undercliff walks, and the total height of the waterfall is around 614 feet or 187 meters. We took the Wentworth Falls track to Fletcher's Lookout. This amounted to about a 30-minute walk down a trail that included 200 plus stairs to the lookout, and then back up those stairs to the car park. Now, we could have continued on to the base of the falls by investing another 30 minutes down the trails and enduring more stairs, and then 1 hour plus back up, making the round trip around 2 hours or so. And that would have been fine, but it was just a little too hard on an old man, if you know what I mean. We eventually made it to Fletcher's Lookout and were treated to an interesting good look at the falls. And if I had proceeded to the bottom, or had a drone, this is what you could have expected to see. And once more treated to the cliffs of the escarpment and stunning views over the National Pass and Jameson Valley. It was once more time to, well, climb those stairs back to the car park. And once there, of course, to head on to our next destination, which was to be Evans Lookout. Evans Lookout was to be our last stop before leaving Blue Mountains National Park. We parked and walked about 600 meters back to the Evans Lookout to see what we could see. The trailhead is also a great jumping off spot for the 6.8 kilometer loop that is the Grand Canyon track, as well as a track leading to Grovitz Leap Lookout. As we moved through the forested area, I spotted this guy just kind of hanging out in the brush. And half a kilometer later, we were at the entrance to Evans Lookout. This is also an access point to the cliff face track that you see snaking by you below. And later on, even a path that leads all the way to the valley floor. And look out it did over sandstone cliffs and the Gross River Valley. Eventually we had had enough and it was time to retreat back toward the car park and continue on to our overnight stop in Wooga Wooga. In Wooga Wooga, we stayed at the Carlisle Suites and Apartments in a 2-bedroom apartment. Wooga Wooga is the largest town in the area with a population of 57,000 and conveniently located midway between the Blue Mountains and Melbourne. We were near downtown Wooga Wooga, so after settling in, we took a walk through the Wooga Wooga Mall before settling on dinner at Schnitz, all things schnitzel. Schnitz is a Australian-style chain restaurant, and as the name suggests, it is schnitzel-centric. Well, the next morning, we were up and out of there and headed towards our final destination of Melbourne, Australia. Please like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Check out more at tomsmultiinterest.com. And stay tuned for parts 3 and 4 of our adventures on the Pacific Rim as we finish up our adventures in Australia. Thank you so much for watching. Check out some of our other videos. And as always, safe and happy travels from T's Cruise and Travel Muse.